In the early 90s, Sony wasn't in the video games business, but by the end of the decade it had crushed giants like Sega and Nintendo, without ever releasing a single game of its own. This is the story of how PlayStation quietly took over. It started with a betrayal. In 1991, Sony was working with Nintendo to build a CD-based console. The idea was to evolve gaming beyond cartridges, but at the last minute, Nintendo backed out of the deal, publicly announcing they were partnering with Philips instead. Sony was humiliated. Most companies would have walked away. Sony didn't. Instead, they built their own console. It was called the PlayStation. At first, no one took it seriously. Sony had no gaming history, no legacy franchises, no fan base, but they had one advantage: CDs. While Nintendo stuck with expensive cartridges, Sony let developers use CDs, which were cheaper to produce, easier to store, and held more data. That meant bigger games, more cinematic experiences, and better profits for developers. Suddenly, third-party studios started jumping ship, and just like that, PlayStation had the edge. By 1995, the original PlayStation was outselling Sega, and by 1996, it had passed 10 million units. But Sony wasn't done. In 2000, they released the PlayStation 2. It wasn't just a console, it was a DVD player. At the time, standalone DVD players were still expensive, but the PS2 was affordable and played games and movies. It became a living room essential. People who had never played a video game in their life bought one. It sold over 155 million units, still the best-selling console of all time. Meanwhile, Microsoft entered the market with the Xbox, and Nintendo released the GameCube. Both were powerful, neither stood a chance. Because by now, Sony wasn't just a tech company, it was a brand, a lifestyle. Owning a PlayStation meant you were part of something bigger, and Sony doubled down on that identity with the PS3. But here's where things got shaky. The PlayStation 3 was powerful, but complicated. Developers struggled to make games for it, and it was expensive. Sony lost a chunk of the market to the Xbox 360, which had a cheaper price and better online features. It was a rare moment of sensitivity. But Sony didn't panic. Then in 2013, they came back with the PS4, cheaper than the Xbox One, easier to develop for, and focused entirely on games. No gimmicks, no TV integrations, just gaming. It worked. The PS4 crushed the competition, selling over 117 million units. Xbox never caught up. But what really made PlayStation untouchable wasn't the hardware, it was the exclusives. Sony built a legendary lineup of in-house studios: Naughty Dog, Santa Monica Studios, Insomnia Games. While Xbox focused on features, PlayStation focused on stories. Games like The Last of Us, God of War, Spider-Man, and Ghost of Tsushima weren't just hits, they were cultural moments. That's the real secret. PlayStation didn't just sell consoles, it created experiences. It built loyalty. By the time the PS5 launched in 2020, Sony was no longer competing on specs. It was competing on emotion, legacy, and identity. The PS5 sold over 50 million units in just 3 years, faster than any console before. Meanwhile, Xbox shifted toward Game Pass, a subscription model, and Nintendo focused on innovation with the Switch. But neither had the combination of power, polish, and prestige that PlayStation had spent 25 years perfecting. So why is PlayStation better? Because Sony understood something others didn't. Gaming isn't just about graphics or specs or online modes, it's about immersion, and nobody does it better than Sony.